Here is another young Tuscarora sister from the Ramapo Mountains. Vince Morgan from Mawa insists that the old-timers used to say that they were descended from Tuscarora Indians. The author, David Cohen, says that they are not descended from the Tuscarora because based on his genealogical research, he concluded that they were the descendants of free blacks. But this again is the Europeans' classification of us, and the lie perpetrated that you cannot look like us and be Aboriginal at the same time. Another example of this is in Robeson County, North Carolina, where in 1830, the majority of the population listed as free blacks consisted of, quote, people who considered themselves Indian. This is an Aboriginal elder from the Ramapo Mountain region who is a folk artist named Ed Morgan. In 1889, James Mooney, an anthropologist working for the Smithsonian Institute, did research on Indian culture and survivors, and he came to the conclusion that, quote, there was undoubtedly considerable Indian ancestry among blacks in the southern coastal plain region. With regards to the powerful Powhatan Confederacy, the Chickahomie, the Mattapony, the Nassaman, Nottoway, Pamunkey, Potomac, and Rappahannock, who held dominion in the region around Virginia, Thomas Jefferson in 1785 is recorded as saying that the Mattaponis have, quote, more Negro than Indian blood in them, end quote. This is a play on words, because what he refers to as Negro and Indian is one and the same people, only victims of the divide and conquer strategy. In a book called Personality in a White Indian Negro Community, American Sociological Review, Volume 4, Guy B. Johnson says that the Croatans and Lumbees of Robeson County, North Carolina, have problems of personal adjustment, such as coming to terms with Negroid physical features in the color-based white society. In an essay entitled Nanticoke and More Folk Medicines by C.A. Westlager, he speaks about the Aboriginals who call themselves Moors and Nanticokes. He says, quote, the Delawares, Shawnee, Seneca, Mohican, and other Eastern Indians claim that their forebears originally received their knowledge of Matapasican, magical and herbal science, from a tribe called the Nanticoke. He goes on to say, regarding a community of Aboriginals in Kent County, Delaware, that, quote, locally, these people are called Moors, end quote. And he further says that, quote, investigations among the Delaware Moors starting in the fall of 1941 led me to conclude that the ancestry of many of the families included both Delaware and Nanticoke Indians, end quote. These people also were classified as Negro on the books of the Europeans, and the struggles of these people against that designation is documented by C.A. Westlager. If they did not look like us, why would they be classified as Negro? This is a clay figurine of a Hopewell woman from the Turner Pyramid and Mounds Complex near Cincinnati, Ohio. James Hugo Johnston, in the book Journey of Negro History, Volume 14, concluded based on his research that the, quote, Indian has not disappeared from the land, but is now part of the Negro population of the United States, end quote. This is a very significant statement. All of the so-called millions of Aboriginals that were said to have been wiped out are not wiped out, but they are us. The Moors, or so-called Indians, on the eastern seaboard of the United States were a maritime people and were the same Moors found on the other side of the Atlantic on the coast from southwest Africa all the way up to England, Ireland, Scotland, Denmark, etc. In fact, the people called the Danes and Vikings were Moorish navigators. David McRitchie says in his book Ancient and Modern Britons on page 299 of volume 1, quote, "It seems likely that the Creekmen or pirates were chiefly of the races of Cimbri or Black Danes and Moori or Blackamoors," end quote. He also says that on the same page that they are better known in modern history under their general designation of Vikings or Creekmen, end quote. The white people found among the Vikings were the white serfs and peasants that David McRitchie says that these Danes and Vikings were terrorizing and enslaving, as well as making pay a tribute called the Danegeld or blackmail. On page 309 he says, quote, "They are presented to us as piratical Vikings or Creekmen, fit descendants of those black heathens that murdered, robbed, and burned all along our shores as far back as the 9th century. Here we have a Moorish brazier found among the remains of the Vikings. This maritime people called Danes, Vikings, and Blackamoors are the same Moors found along the rivers and creeks on the eastern coast of the United States and called Indians. These are the remnants of that ancient Atlantean empire, the dominions of Amexem, that spanned the Atlantic and dominated the land on both sides. We are the direct descendants of these Moors. David McRitchie speaks of the Moors or Indians in Britain as being the same in appearance and culture as the ones over here. This is what accounts for all you hear coming from the Europeans now about the Vikings and Norse discovering America. Well, I got news for them. Those so-called Vikings you talk about were us, Moors. The Moorish paradigm is like Moses' rod. It is definitely swallowing up all other paradigms. The white people in Europe are not indigenous even there, but were brought there by the Moors called the Danes and Vikings from the regions of Patagonia and the Amazon in South America. They were exiled to that part of South America from the region of Yucatan, Mexico, after they were made by the pre-scientists there who were experimenting with the genetic code and interbreeding animals and humans, the so-called Isles of Dr. Moreau. This is also why the Nazis went to South America after World War II. They were going home. More on this will be discussed in a later issue. The white people who were brought to Europe by the so-called Danes and Vikings, Moors, were slaves and were brought to work the land as peasant serfs and work and row the ships and other menial labor. Their women were sold largely as concubines to fill the harems of rich and noble Moors. The names Anglo, Saxon, etc. are the names they derived from the people they were sold as slaves to, who were also us. This is a picture of a Norman knight and his white concubine. When the Europeans began to free themselves and overcome the Moors who were oppressing them in Europe, they began to colonize the lands owned by the Moors in Europe as well as the eastern seaboard of the United States. David McRitchie says on page 229 and 230 of Ancient and Modern Britons, quote, "The country of the Moors or Moray men of the north was colonized by the Norman Dutch people, a white Moorish mixture, under the supervision of David I and his grandson Malcolm IV. The native Moors or Indians who may have been of early Pictish or of Danish stock, were first